A short time ago in a galaxy nearby, a podcast was made to inspire and entertain. Casual Space. Making space available, one story at a time. Your host with grace, Beth Mund.
Christmas has come early for us here at Casual Space and at Stories of Space. Hi, everyone, and happy holidays. It's Beth Mund. I'm the host of Casual Space and the executive director of Stories of Space, where we have had the gift given to us of a story submission extension. If you've been following Stories of Space, let me graciously extend this to you. We've recently got the most incredible opportunity to send your stories to the lunar surface. Thanks to Josh Haynes and Uplift Aerospace, and through the inspiration and artwork of Dr. Cyan Proctor, we have been able to put together an opportunity like none other, where your stories will be a part of Stories of Space Mission 6, where we take stories that you write about the hopes and dreams and technologies and careers and ideas of what life will be like on the lunar surface. And we take those stories as you submit them to us at storiesofspace.com, and we get them digitally ready to go to the moon. How is this happening? Well, again, thanks to Uplift Aerospace. They are partnering with Astrolab, and Astrolab has created an incredible rover that will explore the lunar surface. And on that rover, there will be a very small etched 5D crystal that will contain all of the stories that we submit. This is so exciting, and if you want to learn more about the 5D crystal, about Uplift Aerospace, if you want to be inspired by Dr. Cyan Proctor and her artwork, I highly recommend that you do a couple of things. Check everything out at the Stories of Space website, and listen to last week's episode where I had both Josh and Cyan on as guests, and we walked through all the details of how this began and how there were students who participated in with Cyan and with Josh with sending messages to the moon. And that happened earlier this year. And then just out of just a beautiful coincidence, I was able to connect with Josh and Cyan, and we had extended this invitation for Stories of Space to join this payload. So not only did we receive hundreds and hundreds of stories from you in the last few days, I mean, I'm just overwhelmed, but we are ready to receive thousands. Why? Again, because we have received this story extension. So the deadline was Tuesday the 16th, yesterday. I'm recording this on Wednesday the 17th. And we have a whole nother week, almost and a half, until December 28th to receive your stories. Now, today I just wanted to take a moment to share with you some of the stories that we've been receiving. I have selected 5. And I think in sharing these stories, you will understand what's at the heart of Stories of Space. And it's just a perfect opportunity to share them here at Casual Space, because at Casual Space, we highlight stories just like this. We get inspired. We've had these conversations with artists and engineers and CEOs and astronauts themselves. And what is at the heart of every single episode? Story. Story. People come on and share with me their connection to space through story. And Stories of Space is that platform that does exactly that. It captures those stories. And I cannot tell you, from the days I worked at NASA and ever since, throughout my corporate career, throughout the jobs I've had in my hometown, and my volunteer work at Space Camp, anytime I'm out in public and people know my connection to space or discover it, they have a story that they share with me. And those stories vary. They're wild and creative and funny and unique and historic and sometimes very personal. And through all these years, I have held these stories so close in my heart. And I just knew that I wasn't alone in the need and the desire to share these stories. Because when they just land with me in my ears and in my heart, they just land with me. And I can't possibly scope them just by walking down the street and sharing it with everyone. I try. I do. If you've ever met me, you know this. But I designed Stories of Space as a non-for-profit organization to do exactly that, to collect stories in a database so we can all share them, we can all be inspired by them, and we can all move through these stories in a way that perhaps we take parts of them and apply them into our jobs, and they really help problem solve for the future in space exploration, which is happening, by the way. There are innovations and ideas that are coming through these stories from people of all ages that have been applied in the real world, which is phenomenal. There have been science fiction stories that I have just really just got comfortable in my chair and loved reading. I mean, how these stories get created is just so crazy cool. And then there are these student stories that have my heart. I mean, the adventures that cats go on. And some ideas for space suits and the way we're going to live and work in space by the students. It's fantastic. It's just so great. And then there are the recent stories. Now, what's different? I want to remind everyone who, perhaps if you're discovering Stories of Space for the first time, welcome. I cannot wait for you to discover it on the website and join us. And whether you have a story in your heart or you have something on paper you've always wanted to share, this is your opportunity. This is your invitation. I wanted to capture through these last 5, we've had 5 story missions. 5. We have taken stories, and if you don't know, the first set of stories went to the International Space Station, and they were big and bold and broad, and they were all about space and space exploration. Then we took stories on a zero-G flight. And we talked a lot about and received stories about microgravity, how we test in it, how we're going to live in it one day, and how fun it is. And then we talked on Mission 3, when we took stories to Canada, we talked about the Indigenous people of Canada and their stories and what it's been like for them throughout history to look up at the stars and explore space in their way and their contributions to space. And that's been Mission 3 success, which actually we just completed in November. If you've been following us, it was an absolutely terrific, wonderful privilege to be out at the spaceport in Canso with Maritime Space and with a beautiful rocket from T-Minus Engineering, where we were able to load the digital payload of all your stories on that historic launch, and it was hugely successful. And again, you can hear more about that in previous episodes on the podcast and learn about it at Stories of Space. Then Mission 4 took stories up into the stratosphere with a student-designed and engineered and created weather balloon from a local community college right here in our backyard in the Chicago suburbs. And again, just phenomenal to see the students put this idea together and then take your stories up into the atmosphere. Very cool. It's amazing what students can do. And finally, Mission 5, one of our most recent, happened earlier this summer, where the Stories team and I went underwater, submersed ourselves through scuba into a research facility that was on the ocean floor, where we took your stories, again in digital content on SD cards, and we put them out in the water. And we tested them at different depths, at different time exposures. It was a phenomenal trip. It was one I'll never forget, because for me, and again on another episode you can listen with the team, and that one's one of my favorites, where we all sat down together and shared some of our favorite memories and what really stood out from that experience. And for me, it was just getting into the research facility. I knew that that was one of my biggest fears and challenges. And then once we were down there, I had the best team that just helped move those story submissions through and got them into the water, tested. And it was such a great team building and just a great experience of how one of the closest I've ever experienced to actually being in space, when you have to bring your air and your food and your comforts of home and be in a secluded place that is pressurized and then rely on your team and your training and your wisdom and your previous experience. I mean, all of that came together in Mission 5. Such a joy of an experience. So here we are. Now 5 missions this last 2 years, and now Mission 6 that came upon us really suddenly and allowed us to step into this opportunity very quickly. So again, that gracious, extension on the date, moving to the 28th, is just so great because that means more stories, more of your submissions will be included to go to the lunar surface etched in this beautiful 5D crystal. So learn all about that more on the website. Today, I wanted to just take the time here on the podcast to showcase some of the standout stories we've received for this Mission 6 that touch a little bit on every flavor of story that we get. And the prompt when you go into the website is, what are some of the messages that you want to send to the moon? What are the hopes and dreams, innovations, and things that you want to capture for the future of lunar exploration in the next 50 years? Because it's been 50 years since we've been to the moon. So that's the prompt. And so we're getting all kinds of ideas that we can send to the moon and capture. And here are 5. I've captured 3 very short stories and 2 that I think you're going to find are meaningful and incredibly, I hope they stay with you the way they did with me. So allow me to share with you the first of these stories. This one, the first story is short. It's submitted by Lucero, and he writes, "My daughter loves to learn about space. Our favorite planet is Jupiter. She hopes to be an astronaut or an engineer in the future. She loves to draw, and her artwork will soon be on the moon in an art along with her wish for the future with stories of space. My words will be with hers. Look up at the moon together. We will be connected from the earth to the moon and back. She is the moon, my satellite, my one and only baby girl." So great, so precious. It's stories like this that helps me see the connection that we have with our loved ones when we look up and get inspired by the night sky. It reminds me of one of the very first stories we received on one of our very first missions, on Mission 1, where it came in from a student and they wrote, "I don't really think about space a lot or our future in space. I just know that I'm on one part of the planet and my family is completely on the other side of the planet. And when I look up at a particular star, I know that I'm connected to my family through that star. And we can both, from our different places in the world, see it and know that each other are being thought of." That's one of my favorite stories. And I know I didn't capture it correctly in its entirety, but you can read it in the database. You can read all the stories from Mission 1 through 5 and now 6. So you can find stories just like these in Stories of Space website in the database. Okay, here is another story sent to us by George. George writes this quote, "Man must explore, and this is exploration at its greatest." Quote by Dave Scott as he stepped onto the surface at Taurus Littrow on Apollo 15, 1971. Thank you so much, George, for that reminder and that quote. Yes, we must explore, and this is exploration at its greatest. I agree. And the fact that we have access to this exploration effort through Uplift and through Astrolab makes me just so excited. Just so excited. Okay, here we are, moving on to story number 3. This is from Jeff, and this is something that he shares. "From my earliest memories, I can remember looking up at the sky, dreaming of one day witnessing a permanent habitat on the moon. Too young for Apollo, I closely followed shuttle missions and ISS assembly flights, studied, and became an aerospace engineer. Space exploration is that special spark for imagination, for pushing technology forward towards solving challenging problems, and for providing a goal worthy of obtaining. The inventions and knowledge gained through the process are invaluable, demonstrating advances in one form or another for everyone on Earth. I have never felt more excited and hopeful as I do now that life on the moon and elsewhere in the solar system will be a reality in my lifetime. I'm ready for launch. Are you? Let's do this together. Jeff, did you work for NASA? Are you a NASA aerospace engineer? Jeff, I really related to your message and your story here because I too can remember looking up at the night sky since I was very little. Again, I was too young for Apollo. I didn't get to see this historic moment in human history, but I did obviously follow the shuttle missions very closely, and I was so inspired by them that I ended up working at NASA and also watching the ISS assembly flights as I was working there and helping to tell that public story through my work at Johnson Space Center. So, Jeff, yeah, I'm ready for launch. Let's do this. Let's do this. And launch is coming in July 2026 is the launch of this historic mission that is going to be carried again through Uplift Aerospace and with Astrolab. So your stories is scheduled to launch next summer. Oh my goodness. All right, now I'm going to shift a little bit and share a story that touched my heart so much that I found myself in tears. That's all I'm going to preface. That's all I can say because it's going to take me a little bit to get through this story. It's not long, but it's important, and I think it's really touched. It really spoke to me. Perhaps it will for you as well. This story has been sent in by Joseph, and he writes, in the late 1990s, I went to Hunt Map Middle School, an aerospace magnet school in Portsmouth, Virginia. What made Hunt Map different wasn't a single inspirational teacher or a space unit once a year. It was that every teacher in the program shared a genuine love of space and treated it as a way of thinking, not as a subject. Space wasn't confined just to science class. It was everywhere. It showed up in math problems and writing assignments, in science experiments, history discussions. I want to stop right here because I wish I went to this school. Doesn't this sound amazing? It shaped how teachers talked about systems, failure, leadership, and the future. It wasn't reduced to just today we're learning about space. It was space as a lens through which we could make sense of everyday life. What I didn't realize at the time was that this constant exposure wasn't just teaching me the curriculum, it was also teaching me to notice how stories exist inside everything humans do. This was quietly shaping nearly everything I would do in life moving forward. Back then, though, I wasn't very confident. I was quiet, sensitive, and an easy target for bullies. Drawing was an escape for me. In 7th grade, I drew a comic for a civics class, and something clicked. I realized I could use drawings and story to explain things, and I started drawing my own comics at home every night. I brought them to school and showed a few pages to people I sat near at lunch. After I shared those first pages, something shifted. My peers started coming to me, asking if I had brought the next pages and wanting to know what happened next. They pulled up chairs. They read together. And as seats around me at lunch filled up, the bullying stopped. Some of the same peers who had once given me a hard time asked if they could draw comics too. We even did crossover comics, sharing crude references sheets so that our characters stayed consistent as they crossed into new stories. My classmates weren't just reading my stories anymore. We were building something together. That was when I realized something about both life and storytelling that I've carried with me in my life ever since. Stories don't just entertain. They can completely change the life you're living in and profoundly influence the world around you. They build relationships. They let other people see themselves differently too, and sometimes uncover another version of themselves they can feel proud of. I've carried that way of thinking everywhere with me, the belief that curiosity belongs everywhere, that imagination isn't an escape from the world, but a way of engaging with it. In an era when so much of the conversation around space has become about spectacle, I still believe in the quieter version I encountered first, the version that helps people connect to one another and experience awe, wonder, curiosity, and unity. That's the version of the story I'm still excited by. And it's deeply meaningful to see that that version of the story is thriving thanks to stories of space. First off, if you've ever had a school experience that has changed you, I feel like that's really captured here. If you've ever been bullied, and who hasn't in some way, shape, or form in life, this story of overcoming through connection, through art and story and creative sharing, it's amazing what story sharing can do. And then the ending of this story, that curiosity belongs everywhere, that imagine isn't just an escape from the world, but a way of engaging with it. Story allows us to do that. It's so much the reason why I feel that this can be a lot of things to a lot of people. It can be about putting feet on the moon and exploring. It can be about the feelings you have about the moon. It can be about how we're going to live and operate off Earth one day and perhaps on the moon. It can be very historic and factual. We can capture the stories from previous lunar explorers and put them here, right here, in the mission submissions sheet, which I've done before. I've captured some parts of history that I think are very important to etch into the moon on the lunar surface. And that is the perfect transition to my last story that I want to share with you. This is from an author, a friend, and a colleague whose name is Mark. And he's written some stories you might be familiar with before. He's been on the podcast before. He's an incredible author. And here's something I want to share with everyone. If you want to, all of our submissions are first name basis only, simply because we have so many student submissions and we want to protect students' privacy and not, when they submit their data, it's just their name. And so, phone numbers, no location of where they're at and all those things legally and respectfully stay not a part of the submission. So when people submit and they want to put their full name into the story, you can do that. You simply go into the actual story submission part and you can write, "This story is coming to you from Beth Munt." It's a wonderful way to capture your personal information if so you choose. And that's exactly what Mark has done here. So let me share with you Mark's story. He has written A Rather Brief History of Life on the Moon by Mark Hartzman. Long before Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the lunar surface, it was believed that other beings were already there. For example, in 1835, the world feverishly read news stories about an entire race of human-like winged people living on the moon. It became known as the Great Moon Hoax. And indeed, it was great. It all began with an article in Tuesday, August 25th edition of the New York Sun, stating that renowned astronomer Sir John Frederick William Herschel, who named several moons of Saturn and 4 moons of Uranus, had observed life on our satellite. Wondrous forms of flora were joined by a monstrous blue-bearded unicorn, tailless beavers that walked on their hind legs, lived in huts and built campfires, and the aforementioned Batmen. The ruse lasted 1 week. In 1909, Professor Gaius, I hope I said that right, an Italian scientist, suggested that the moon could support life despite having no water or no atmosphere. He believed, according to reports, that, quote, beings differently formed from outside ourselves should lead active lives in lunar regions. I'm sorry, no conditions of natural life upon Earth having yet been shown to wholly exclude animate existence. Sorry, I stumbled through that part. By the early 1920s, Harvard professor William H. Pickering, who had previously explored ways to contact intelligent life on Mars, challenged the notion that the moon was lifeless. Pickering believed that markings observed on the face of the moon were caused by areas of vegetation, including mushroom-like growths that sprouted up when the sun warmed the surface. These patches of vegetation, Pickering explained, shift positions over the surface like the canals on Mars. In both cases, the surface of discoloration has changed its place. This cannot be due to mineral inorganic force. Life, therefore, exists on both planets. Thus, we find a living world at our doors where life, in some respects, resembles that on Mars, but is utterly unlike anything on our own planet world. Quote, a visitor to the moon, it was believed, would experience remarkable growth spurt within a month's stay. One newspaper reported such a person would, quote, find that he had been raised from a height of 5 feet 8 inches or thereabouts to a height of 750 feet by the unusual conditions of climate and atmosphere. Looking himself over, he would find that his weight had shrunk to 90 pounds. This is exactly how I want to go to the moon. I want to be super tall and super skinny. Granted, Armstrong and Aldrin were only on the moon's surface for hours, not a month, but had they grown to 750 feet, their suits would have been torn apart, and the suddenly giant astronauts would have never made the return trip to Earth with Michael Collins. Though no humans have walked on the moon since 1972, life is once again believed to exist on the moon, as reported in Wired, with a crew of tardigrades, Earth's most powerful creatures known to survive being boiled at 149 degrees Celsius, was shipwrecked when the Israeli Beresheet probe crashed on the surface in April of 2019, and the tiny passengers were part of a payload which included human DNA. It belonged to a nonprofit called Arch Mission Foundation, whose mission is to create, quote, a backup planet Earth. It is believed that the tardigrades will survive on the moon for years. Perhaps they'll grow, as Pickering suggested, and greet the Flex Flip rover when it lands, adding a new story to every story on its 5D crystal data storage that it carries. Mark, thank you. That is terrific. Mark writes stories just like this about UFOs, about life on the moon, about all kinds of things that you're going to want to check out. Seriously, if you don't know Mark Hartzman and his works, you should. So, folks, these are the stories that are being sent to us within the last several days. You've got stories from students, you've got stories about families, you've got stories about people who have overcome challenges in their life because they think and solve through sharing of stories and art. And then you have hundreds and hundreds more. They're all in the database for you to see and read and enjoy on your own. And we only have until December 28th to send and capture all these stories and collect them. Now, what happens? No matter what kind of story you send to the moon, it will go. And as long as it's clean, not violent, has no inappropriate sexual references, racism, etc. This is all in the disclaimer when you agree to submit your story. It's all there. But everything that you send until the 28th will be on this lunar flight. So I've sent a story, and my kids have sent a story. My family has sent a story. Most people who know me have taken just a moment and shared something at some level. and I'm so grateful. But the stories that are coming in from around the world are the ones I've really enjoyed. I've really enjoyed. And after the 28th, you can still send your story for future lunar missions. And we're going to be making some very big announcements in the new year. So you're going to want to follow us at Stories of Space. You can listen to it right here. I haven't done this in a while where I've shared stories on the podcast here at Casual Space. So I hope you've enjoyed these. I thought they were really worth sharing. It was hard to pick just 5. There are hundreds and hundreds. I'm surprised as I'm working, I just get flagged and flagged nonstop from the stories that are coming in, and they're still coming in. Even though the deadline was on Tuesday and I'm just now today, Wednesday, announcing the extension, stories are still coming in. So if you're getting out of school at the end of this week, I know it's finals and everyone's wrapping up and businesses are going to start to slow down as we get into the holidays. You know, there's always that moment at the holidays where you have a moment to yourself, I hope, or have a minute without work or school, I hope. And you can sit with your intentions and your thoughts. And I can't think of a better gift or a better opportunity than for you to sit down yourself, or even better yet, sit down with someone you care for and write a story and send it. Put your intentions forward that will forever be captured on the lunar surface. It's just so terrific to think about. It's just the gift that I never imagined possible. And here it is. So I'm extending the invitation to you. I hope you take advantage of it during this perhaps holiday time. And I wanted to also allude to something coming up for Casual Space Podcast. I will be doing just a couple more episodes at the end of the year. They're going to be super fun. I'm going to do a little bit of a look back. We've accomplished so much. We've had so many guests. This one has been all about stories of space, but the next several will be a little bit of a different tone. And I'm going to be able to share that with you in a really wonderful, exciting way. So I hope you tune in. And then I'm going to give you the preview and a little highlight teaser for what's coming in the new year. And there are big things on the horizon, just like this, just like Mission 6. So thank you. If you've been listening to Casual Space, thanks for listening all the way through to this. I hope you've enjoyed the stories. I hope you get a moment to submit yours. And then I hope you come on back and tune in next time for Casual Space, where I'll be sharing some very exciting things, not only here on the podcast, but on the website and everywhere you find us, both through Casual Space, through all the socials and Stories of Space. You're not going to want to miss it. So happy holidays between now and then. I cannot wait to receive your story from all of us at Stories of Space and from all of us here at Casual Space. Thank you. Send your story and your thoughts. Share them with us. You'll never know who they can inspire in the next 50 years. They're going to the moon, everyone. So December 28th, and then I will see you back here next week on Casual Space.